like that. There you go. So as we mentioned, we're going to be covering today maximizing games growth, what we learn on paid and organic lessons managing about 40 games. Enric, it's me, VP of Growth, and we have Karolina.
Hi, I'm Karolina, Senior Organic Growth Director at Tilting Point. Nice to meet you all.
All right, so with that, just a bit of the agenda. I'm not gonna, we have about 20 minutes, so we have done a couple of rounds making sure that we feed as much of detail as possible in those times. So we got a couple of minutes as well for some questions. So the agenda for today, introductions, we're gonna cover really fast. Growth formula, which you're gonna see one slide, and then correlation analysis, where we're analyzing what happens with iOS and Android and the vitals on the stores. Case studies, which Karolina is going to cover to back up what we were stating so in the previous slides. And finally, lessons from growth tactics and tools and what we're looking forward to apply in 2022 and beyond. So, Tilting Point, what's our vision or what our mission? It's to change developer lives. How we do so? It's growing their games, scaling their mobile games mainly. These are some of the partners that we currently work with. Some of the games that we have been developing, you see some gray boxes because these are games that are coming into the market this year, next year. Point being that we have seen many games across many genres, so we pretty much cover almost everything except hyper casual. So, how we deploy growth, this is pretty straightforward, pretty basic, but it is worth mentioning. I think it's interest to you guys on how we do it at Tilting Point. It's that our growth department is divided across 3 sub-departments, if you want to call it. So we have do I have a pointer here? Yes, I do have a pointer. Cool. So we have the, I'm pointing the lady, yes. So we have, there you go. So we have paid growth, which is UA. We have as well organic growth, which is AS App Store optimization, featuring, IP integration. We're going to give you a bit more details on what that entails in a few more slides on the case studies. And finally, monetization growth, which is, as the name states, trying to make as much money as we can, either from ads or from improving their in-app purchases. So, the growth formula, that's the slide that I was telling you before that we will cover with a bit more details on the next slides. This is pretty basic again, but that's how we normally apply it with a new game coming in our portfolio. We obviously, every single game is going to have a different approach. Every single game is going to be in a different stage, have a different set of tools or mechanisms, strategies that the developer already applied. But this, if you try to follow these stages where, first you focus on the UA, then you do look into ASO, and so on and so forth, you are likely to have a good chance that your game is going to grow. That is, hey, Tilting Point, we're already covering UA and ASO, and we believe we're doing the best that we can right now. Good. Have you looked, for instance, on working with influencers? Or how is your platform relationship and featuring with Google and Apple? Oh, we don't have any point of contact. Or, oh, we never work with influencers. Well, that's probably likely the stages that you should be looking into to get to the next level with your game. Now, metric correlation studies. Again, Karolina is going to give you a bit more details on these with the case studies that we're going to cover the next slides. As you know, or as most of you should know, there are several battles that both Apple and Google account for. Could be page views, how many people are seeing your App Store page, conversion rate, it could be your app size, it could be the in-app purchase numbers, it could be the amount of revenue. All of these factors account for how well your app is going to, or game is going to be ranking, how likely it is for someone to go on the store, get a featuring, and so on and so forth. However, this fluctuates between Apple and Google. So what the team did, what our growth team did, was try to work out a correlation and see what had the biggest impact on the store visibility, both on Apple and Google. Here you can see that we are talking about from strong negative correlation to strong positive. We try to focus for the sake of time on just the most important, i.e. the ones that has the highest impact or medium impact. So we drop on the next slides where are the low impact ones. So, damn it, you just keep going back. So with Google, these are the main factors you should be accounting for or looking into with the store impact. So as we state here, they have the biggest impact on Google Play installs. So these are the topics that you want to work on. So I am already doing great on UA. I'm already doing great with organics. Why my store is not getting, why my app is not getting featured? Why my app is not getting top 10? So you definitely want to look into these factors. We will go with a bit more detail and a couple of those in the next following slides. I know I keep saying this, but I'm teasing you guys just so it makes sense for you to look into the case studies. With Apple though, things change a little bit. So I see a lot of you guys taking pictures, which is good. So that, there is an interest, good stuff. So Apple, going back Google, as you can tell, there are a few of those. I'm going back Google, Apple. So you can see that these factors fluctuate. So for instance, an easy one to spot, app size, this one here. On Google has a medium impact, whereas on Apple, not that they couldn't care less. Sure, on third world countries, where there is no good connection, etc., it makes sense, but overall, that doesn't apply as much as it will do with Google. Now that I teased you all of this, we're going to move on with Karolina, who's going to give you a bit more details on a few case studies where we're covering some of these metrics.
Thank you. You teased this case study so much, we are now famous.
You better be good now.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just checking. Okay, working. Great. So, now I'm going to go into some specifics. So what Enric covered was a lot of theory, how it's working, what factors make an impact. Now I want to talk to you about some specific examples, starting with a nod towards our Poland-based partners from Miner Settlement. I don't know if anyone is here from Fund Venture. No. Oh, hello. So nothing super new here. This is a warm-up slide that's here to showcase to you guys that paid and organic are really, really strongly correlated. You can see here, where's the red?
The pointer is that one there.
Oh, wow. Here. You can see here that if you apply for featuring, you can get a smaller spike. This is about 39% spike. But then when we actually did a massive paid UA campaign, which was correlated with a big push from our ASO team. We had new screenshots, we had new icon applied. This created a very large boost. So paid UA grew 250%, but browse actually grew a whopping 387%. All of that is because when paid UA scales, organic ASO also gets an extra boost. So overall, there's a huge impact on visibility. So now going deeper, what we then discovered is that actually how you spend your UA also matters for organics. So this is an example from a game that actually had no UA in Tier 1 countries. And then we started Google UAC. And we discovered that when you actually start Google UAC, we all know that console actually registers a lot of these UAC installs as organic browse because of that's how they report data in the console that they changed, I think, back in 2020. And what happens is that because all of these installs are then registered as browse, that's a signal that's being given to the algorithm that this game is growing organically, and then it gets a boost from similar apps. So here you can see that when we were spending on Google UAC, suddenly we started getting boosts in these similar apps, getting even more traffic, and overall the game grew on Explore by 323%. And then we switched to Facebook campaigns, and all that visibility actually dropped from this similar app. Another interesting example from a game that Tilting Point owns, Star Trek Timelines. You spend on UA, you have a big boost in UA, and you apply for featuring at the same time. And again, you start getting a lot of boost here from similar apps. So basically you get the algorithm recognizes that you're actually scaling the game, and it's giving you more visibility on the store. So in this case, we scaled our paid campaign and by over 1,000%, but organic also boosted by about 800%. Because of that scaling factor, and the algorithm reacts to the fact that you're actually scaling the game, it's giving you a lot more installs. I don't know how many of you heard about ANRs. Many developers have been struggling with ANRs for a really long time. It's been something we've actually been looking into a lot, been trying to fix that across games. And actually, it's funny because we actually speak to the data team a lot about it, to the tech team a lot about it, but it's actually the marketing team that gets affected the most because the organics go down when ANRs go up. So here you have an example where actually ANRs started going up to a peak of about 1.2. And you can actually see how, again, the store reacts to it, and you start seeing a lot less visibility. So when you're actually seeing the ANR spikes, you're seeing a lot less visibility being driven to the app. And what's important to note is that at the same time, there's like a significant drop in organics, and it's actually quite sharp. On the other hand, when you have a positive case of ANRs, here on Narcos Cartel Wars, we actually managed to finally discover, because it's worth noting that every game has like different reasons why ANRs are high. It's very hard to get to it. There's a lot of digging involved, a lot of QA. In case of Narcos, the reason was that there were issues with the Google Billing Library. So actually they switched to Billing Library 4, and there was like a massive, massive drop in ANRs from like 3% to 1%. 1% is still above the threshold, but that was already a very positive signal that the game is getting fixed, and the organics started going up. But you can see that, as on the previous slide, it actually takes on this slide, the drop is quite sudden. When it's a positive case, when ANRs actually dropped, it actually is a very slow recovery of organics. And the reason for that is that, again, the stores and the algorithms, they actually wait to see if this game is fixed permanently. It's not just like a temporary spike for like 5 minutes and then it's going to go back to the previous rate. Okay, switching gears. I don't know how many of you here do InApp Events. Tool launched by Apple back in November 21. Tilting Point actually jumped on it right away. We wanted to be the early adopters because we knew that, we wanted to be ahead of competition. So what happened was we actually ran in-app events in the first couple of weeks of them launching across 8 of our games. So we scaled up very quickly. And we actually saw that we are getting a ton of visibility at the start. So here, you can see that recently, this is 2022 data, these are our top 3 events. The top one generated about 208,000 impressions. When we started back in November 2021, we were generating about 600 to 800,000 impressions. It's because there was not that much competition, Apple was giving us a ton of visibility, and now so many more people do in-app events that it's just a lot harder to get impressions. Also, one piece of advice, if you're doing in-app events, try to make them a bit longer and try to focus around larger events. Reason for that is if they are very small events running just for 4 days, you might not see any impact on data. In fact, if it's a very short event and you have very low conversion, even less than 10 installs, you will not even see the data in App Store Connect. And one interesting learning is that between Apple and Google, what we are seeing is that Apple actually serves a lot more impressions than Google, but Google has a much better conversion rate. So even though, when we actually summarize across all the 2022 events, even though on average, Apple is serving a lot more impressions than Google, we're actually getting more installs from Google on average. So we are trying to do in-app events and Liveops Cards across both platforms, but actually for us, Google Play is performing better. So we've been adopting Google Play Liveops Cards for a long time across all our games. They work much better on games that are super viral. So SpongeBob Krusty Cuckoo is a very viral game that we have in our portfolio, and every time that we actually run an Liveops card, we're getting significant spikes, not only in new users, but actually we're getting better results in returning users. So over time, we discovered there's actually a better re-engagement tool than it actually is a tool for bringing new users. So new users, we're getting about 30% spikes. For re-engaging users, we're getting about 100% spikes. And then you have these big numbers coming from special events like Halloween and Christmas. because the game actually gets a lot of what we call organic featuring from platforms. So when you actually have Halloween and Christmas, you get a lot of visibility for SpongeBob, and that generates even bigger spike from these events. Okay. So this is actually my last slide, and I kept it for the end because I wanted to highlight one important thing. If you want to drive a lot of organics, focus on choosing one really big update for your game and then work with all your team to activate as many channels as you can around this update. In this case, we brought an IP integration with a brand called Stargate, which is a popular show from the 90s. I don't know if you know it, but it's got like 9 seasons, I think. And we brought it into the game Astro Kings. We did all the research. We made sure it's the right target audience, the right fit, and it performed extremely well for us. You can see there were 2 events, one in May, one in September. Both generated huge spikes. In September, actually, we managed to get featuring from iOS. That's why this blue line is much bigger. And we managed to generate a huge boost of 1,128% in organic installs because we activated everything. We brought an interesting concept for a campaign. I'm not saying you always have to have a brand integration. I know not everyone can secure a brand integration, but you can have another game-changing update that's really, really interesting. Oh, sorry. And you can activate all your channels around it. You can do featuring, you can do a full ASO refresh, you can do a UA push, you can do even like above the line PR and more traditional marketing, and all of that contributes to the huge spike in installs. So that's an example of one of our most popular campaigns that actually performed very well. Okay, so that's all from me. We also have a few slides from Enric about CPPs and how we've been trying to implement those.
And thank you, Karolina. All right, so you probably heard about CPP. If you did not, quickly, it's custom product page. So basically what Apple's allow you now to do is you can kind of like make a bespoke journey where the user, after clicking on a specific ad, they're landing on a bespoke App Store page. So you could theoretically change the look and feel of the icon or your app screens, so it's more fitting with whichever type of ad you're running or whichever type of emotion or perhaps type of user you're trying to attract. Point being, CPP has been able in the space for now quite a few months, but running it through with Apple Search Ads or running it through other networks is being quite challenging. Right now, however, with Apple Search Ads, we are able to run one CPP asset at a time. That is, you can run an additional custom product page and drive traffic towards it. The CPP must be submitted for review first. These are examples for Narcos Cartel Wars. As you can see, even though it's the same game, we're changing the screen so it has a different look and feel. So when we went ahead with the CPP on Apple Search Ads, we have seen pretty good results. CPA, cost per acquisition, or a paying user, decreased by 68%. CVR improved by 15%. He's our, we call it default old ad, but that's what we're sitting on the App Store page. And these are the CPPs. As you can see, CVR improvement. You can see here the overall CVR, it's better than this one here. And you can see here as well, the cost per acquisition, as in a paying user, it's way lower with the CPPs versus the control group. I.e., if you did not test or run yet with CPP and Apple Search Ads, or even running yet with Apple Search Ads, we strongly encourage you to do so. Additionally, you're running with Apple Search Ads, similar to what Karolina was mentioning to you guys a few slides before about Google UAC and its impact on organic. We're seeing the same with Apple and Apple Search Ads. So we start the campaign here on Apple Search Ads installs, right here, as you can see here. And you know, right out the bat, when we started with the Apple Search App installs, search units improved as well. Units from search improved as well dramatically. Like there is, you know, before and after, there is no question whatsoever that it had a direct impact. Numbers, it increased search units by 75%. Browse units increased by 66%. Meaning, if you start running Apple Search Ads, your organic will improve as well, similar to what we're seeing too with Google UAC. Now, this is the last slide. I'm conscious that we're running out of time, and we like to cover perhaps a couple of questions afterwards. So what's next for Tilting Point, or what we're currently working on? We have shown you what we've seen, and we believe that could be worth for you guys to invest some time. Now, these are things that we are currently working on, and hopefully maybe next year we can come back again and tell you guys from these, we found these results, etc. So things that Tilting Point is currently working in 2022. As Karolina mentioned, find the INApp rate solution. We set ANR rates, it changes by game, yada, 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 but clear to us that if we are able to mitigate ANRs, games do way, way better. So that's the first one. Continue Apple Search Ads and CPP testing. I just showed you 2 slides before. I mean, with those results, it makes sense for us to keep investing both on CPP and Apple Search Ads. New brand integrations, we cover them. You saw the one from Stargate, for instance. And yes, we agree, we acknowledge that not everyone can do a brand integration. No one can go to a Stargate and say, hey, we're going to pay you $200,000 to get this brand there. Yes, but that doesn't mean that you have to stop like, well, we just scratch that. It might be worth for some of you to account, if that's an option, it might be worth for you to explore that. Because when the brand fits the game, you're going to see really good results, as we saw with the Stargate. Test UAC impact on organics on more games. Karolina showed you before. We discussed Apple Search Ads. We saw as well UAC. We see how this has an impact with organic traffic. So definitely we want to keep leveraging that. The algorithm factors and their impact on referred apps. Hopefully you all know what a referred app is. We covered earlier today as well. But when a user is browsing and the App Store page, we will play similar apps that you might like, similar games to this one. So how do we get our game shown on as many of those similar apps as possible? Because when that game is being featured, call it, or being a spotlight on another game that is doing even better, the ranks go up the roof. We have direct competitors of ours, which given the similar name on the game, we're being shown on their similar game or app site every now and then. And when it happens, you can definitely see the boost on our traffic. Ad networks with new bidding strategies. I'm aware that we did not cover much in detail about UA specifically, but beyond Facebook, Google, Unity, Iron Source, AppLovin, or Max, all of these networks are coming up with new ways to optimize your traffic or your campaigns. It could be, for instance, what they call it an ad ROAS campaign, where they're optimizing for your ad revenue. It could be an in-app purchase ROAS campaign. They gave it different names for the same strategy. Point being that with some networks, we're seeing good, or starting to see good results with these new bidding strategies. So when a rep comes to you, hey, have you guys tried to run ad ROAS campaigns, and your game makes a lot of money through ad revenue, it makes sense to give it a go. I'm not saying that it's going to work all the time, but it's worth your team's time to give it a go. And finally, last but not least, alternative platform distribution and growth. Beyond Google and Apple, there are many other stores. There's Facebook Instant Games, there is Amazon, there is Samsung, there's Huawei. We are starting to see, we acknowledge that there is some of these alternative stores that are doing well and that are growing. For instance, Facebook Instant Games are proving to be a good source of revenue from some of our games, as well as Huawei, Samsung. So Amazon, it's worth for you to test as well to port your game to alternative distribution channels, we call it. It's not, again, it's not going to work on all your instances or all your games, but when it does, hey, if you add 10, 20, 30, $50,000 at the end of the month, that can pay for a few more heads on your company. And with that, I think we pretty much cover it. Thank you very much for being here today with us. You can close. Thank you. Question? Do we have? Yes? Yes. All right. You shout or pass the?
I can ask.
All right, sure.
The question regarding custom product page. Are you guys also analyzing post-install performance for custom product page, and how?
Cheeky question. Where you are? Well, that's a good question. So you want to answer it? You want me to answer it?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. It's a good point. So I'm going to go back to the slide because that's actually a good one. Yes, we are seeing, that's a really good point. Yes, we are seeing good search, it improved. Yes, browsing is increased as well. But to our question, what's the performance of these users afterwards? Lower. It's not, overall, the ROAS is not, it's the users that we bring on board, don't have as much of an impact in terms of our revenue as other users from other networks or organically. That being said, even though the increase on their revenue is smaller, the fact that we are increasing the number of visibility that we have, it is still worth us to go ahead. But call it the quality of the user. We don't want to apply this to all games. I'm not saying this is going to happen to all your games, but it's true that the quality of the user that we're bringing from Apple Search Ads, their performance overall, it's lower, as in not as good as we have seen across other networks. That's true. Want something else?
I just want to add, we're still testing. So we only did about 3 different games that we tested. And it's true what Enric said. So far, we actually managed to drive good traffic, but then the conversions actually weren't the same. But it's possible that, we might find other games in the future that will actually drive more traffic. Meaning better conversions, not more traffic.
And how you guys actually comparing the default product page with the custom product page? Because as far as I know, it's sending to different users, right? With both version. So if you have some way to actually
This is recorded. It's fine. It's being a pain in the ass to do CPP with networks. Facebook has a tool that is being released. I believe Google, we have tried as well third-party tools in hopes that we can leverage.
Well, Facebook is now fixed.
It's fixed now? Well, but we're talking about last week, 2 weeks ago. Like, we're literally, this is early stages for us running the CPP campaigns. It's back to the point. It's being a pain in the ass to get networks to be able to leverage the 35 other or 34 other store pages that you can create. It's way easier for now to do the old school A/B test with a third-party tool that it's faking the App Store page. But the way to go would be for us, I would encourage you to keep focusing with CPP. Ultimately, that's working with Apple. So as of now, it's, again, a pain in the ass to manage, but that's the future.
I know.
You know, that's good.
Yeah, it was
We agree.
also because we wanted again to be early adopters, with InApp Events, but we felt that Apple released the tool, but it wasn't really ready to be used with other networks. So I think now Facebook has fixed the pixel issue. There was a pixel issue with Facebook that's been now fixed, and we can now start running it with other networks. But it was very challenging at the start.
More questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Guys, for your presentation.
All right, thank you.